There's a state where the median home spends 80 days on the market, double the national median of 40 days, where housing inventory hit 5.6 months of supply, twice the national level, where home sales have been declining for 4 consecutive years, and where even sellers offering price reductions of 10 to 15% are struggling to find buyers willing to absorb the total cost of ownership. The state is Hawaii. And it's not even the worst on this list. Across America, the housing market has been quietly restructuring since 2022, and the result has been a sustained slowdown in transaction velocity that has left sellers stranded in markets they entered with very different expectations. According to Clever Real Estate's 2025 analysis of national MLS data, the 10 slowest selling states have a median of 63 days on market, compared to 40 days nationwide, with all 10 carrying housing inventory above the national median of 2.8 months. According to OfferPad's analysis of 350,000 single-family home transactions across 15 major metros, every single market analyzed in Q1 2026 was slower than it was a year earlier, with the gap between the fastest, Columbus at 53 days, and the slowest, San Antonio at 101 days, reaching nearly 7 weeks. According to the National Association of Realtors, U.S. existing home sales hit their lowest level in 30 years in 2025, with the slump now in its 4th consecutive year. And underneath those numbers, the structural conditions in 10 American states have produced specific patterns of seller paralysis. Mortgage rate lock-in for sellers who refuse to give up sub 4% rates, insurance disruption that has made carrying costs unpredictable, property tax increases that have not been offset by inventory accumulation in markets where the buyer demographic has thinned faster than the seller demographic. And in 10 American states, the math has tipped from selling is straightforward to the home sits and sits and sits. In this countdown, we're exposing 10 states no one can sell their house in anymore in 2026. Not the cliché version where the housing market is in trouble nationwide. The real one. The version where specific state-level conditions have produced sustained seller paralysis through insurance disruption, regulatory pressure, climate-driven cost increases, and demographic shifts that have left inventory piling up faster than the buyer pool can absorb. Subscribe before your state's MLS data shows the same patterns next month. Like the video if you've ever watched a neighbor's for sale sign sit for 8 months and known the reason wasn't just the price. Now you'll know the actual structural conditions driving the slowdown. Let's break it down. Number 10. Tennessee, the volunteer state where Nashville home prices climbed approximately 50% between 2020 and 2024, where the inbound migration boom has crested and inventory has begun accumulating, where the no state income tax appeal has been priced into homes that buyers increasingly find unaffordable, and where days on market have climbed substantially from peak years. Tennessee gained 325,319 net residents from 2020 to 2024. Nashville median home prices climbed approximately 50% between 2020 and 2024. Tennessee's net domestic migration has slowed in 2025 from its 2022 peak. Tennessee's median household income sits around $63,000. Putting pressure on housing affordability for in-state buyers. Tennessee inventory has expanded in 2025 as out-of-state demand has slowed. The Tennessee real estate reality is that the inbound migration that drove the 2021 to 2023 price appreciation has slowed faster than the seller expectations have adjusted. The state's no state income tax appeal remains real. The Nashville metro has continued to attract some migration. The price increases of 2020 to 2024, however, have priced out the median in-state buyer. What residents notice in Tennessee is that the time between listing and accepted offer has lengthened substantially, with sellers who priced their homes based on 2022 comparables now facing extended marketing periods. Sharp contrast. Tennessee and Kentucky are direct neighbors. Kentucky has not experienced the same migration-driven price appreciation as Tennessee. Tennessee sellers face the consequences of pricing during peak demand, while Kentucky has had more measured appreciation throughout. Same region, very different post-migration trajectories. Tennessee's seller paralysis reflects the broader pattern of states whose pandemic-era migration booms have given way to inventory accumulation as the buyer pool has thinned. Number 9. Colorado, the Centennial State, where Denver home prices climbed to over $620,000, where Mountain West migration has slowed dramatically, where insurance carriers have reduced coverage in fire-adjacent counties, and where the cost of staying has compressed faster than the cost of selling. Colorado home prices climbed approximately 38% between 2020 and 2025. Colorado wildfire risk has driven insurance market disruption with multiple carriers reducing coverage in mountain and forest-adjacent counties. Colorado's net domestic migration has dropped from significant gains in 2020 to 2022 to roughly flat in 2025. Colorado property tax assessment increases have hit homeowners across the Front Range. Colorado mountaintown median home prices in places like Aspen and Vail have separated entirely from local wage structures. The Colorado real estate reality is that the Mountain West migration brand has been disrupted by the same structural conditions affecting other Mountain West states. Wildfire insurance premiums have climbed, property tax assessments have increased, the mountain town markets have priced out their own workforces. What residents notice in Colorado is that the seller who listed in early 2024 expecting 2022 buyer enthusiasm now faces extended marketing periods, multiple price reductions, and insurance-related buyer hesitation. Sharp contrast, Colorado and Utah are both Mountain West states. Utah's pension and fiscal structure has supported steadier housing market dynamics. Colorado has been more exposed to wildfire-driven insurance disruption. Same region, very different post-2022 trajectories. Colorado's seller paralysis reflects the cumulative weight of insurance, property tax, and migration shifts that have compressed seller flexibility while inventory has expanded. Number 8. Arizona, the Grand Canyon state where statewide home values dropped 6.8% year-over-year in 2025. Where Phoenix recorded its hottest summer on record with over 70 days above 110 degrees, where the Colorado River water allocation continues to face structural pressure, and where the retirement migration buyer demographic has thinned substantially. Arizona's statewide home values dropped approximately 6.8% year-over-year in 2025. Phoenix recorded over 70 days above 110 degrees in summer 2024, the most on record. Arizona's Colorado River water allocation continues to face structural challenges. Arizona home insurance premiums have climbed alongside other Sunbelt states. Arizona's population growth has slowed substantially from its 2020 to 2022 peak. The Arizona real estate reality is that the retirement migration brand has been disrupted by climate, water, and cost pressures that have not been offset by structural seller protections. Home values have declined. Insurance has climbed. The summer months have intensified. The retirement buyer demographic has been running the math more carefully. What residents notice in Arizona is that the seller who entered the market expecting 2022 inbound demand now faces a buyer pool that's significantly smaller and more selective. Sharp contrast. Arizona and Nevada are both Sunbelt states with retirement migrity on brands. Nevada has experienced similar but slightly different dynamics due to its tourism economy exposure. Arizona has been more exposed to climate and water pressure. Same region, slightly different sector exposures. Arizona's seller paralysis reflects the broader Sunbelt pattern of pandemic-era migration, giving way to inventory accumulation as the structural conditions have shifted. Number 7. Idaho, the gem state where Boise home prices peaked at 26.3% appreciation in May 2021, where year-over-year price growth had collapsed to just 1.1% by January 2026, where foreclosure filings rose 94.34% year-over-year in October 2025, and where the California migration that drove the boom has slowed substantially. Idaho home appreciation peaked at 26.3% in May 2021. Idaho year-over-year price growth had collapsed to just 1.1% by January 2026. Idaho recorded 206 foreclosure filings in October 2025, up 94.34% year-over-year. Idaho's net domestic migration has remained positive, but has slowed substantially from peak years. Idaho Tax Foundation's State Business Tax Climate Ranking dropped 4 spots in 2026. The Idaho real estate reality is the most extensively documented Mountain West correction in 2025 and 2026. The California migration has slowed. The home prices have corrected. The foreclosure rate has climbed substantially. The sellers who bought at the peak now face the consequences of the most extreme appreciation cycle in the Mountain West. What residents notice in Idaho is that the seller who bought a Boise home in 2021 for $620,000 now faces a market where the home value is approximately $640,000, but the buyer pool has thinned and the sale process has lengthened significantly. Sharp contrast. Idaho and Wyoming are both Mountain West states. Wyoming has not had the same housing cost increase or correction. Idaho overpriced itself for a moment in 2021 and is now absorbing the consequences in transaction velocity. Same region, very different boom dynamics. Idaho's seller paralysis reflects the most extensively documented Mountain West correction, and with the math of being priced for migration that has crested, producing extended marketing periods for sellers. Number 6. Texas, the Lone Star State, where Austin home days on market reached 89.7 days in Q1 2026, where San Antonio crossed the 100-day mark for the first time at 101 days, where Texas property taxes remain among the highest in America, and where the no state income tax appeal has been offset by structural carrying costs. Texas property tax effective rate is approximately 1.74%, among the highest in America. Austin home days on market reached 89.7 days in Q1 2026, with average price drops of $23,833. San Antonio days on market reached 101 days in Q1 2026, the highest in major Texas metros. Texas reported the highest hail damage volume in America in 2024. Texas home insurance premiums have climbed sharply across coastal, central, and northern regions. The Texas real estate reality is that the no state income tax marketing has masked a structural carrying cost environment that has compressed buyer affordability. Property tax bills have remained high. Home insurance premiums have climbed. The pandemic-era price appreciation has plateaued or corrected. The buyer pool that absorbed inventory at peak rates in 2021-2022 has thinned substantially. What residents notice in Texas is that the seller in Austin or San Antonio who listed in 2023 expecting rapid demand now faces marketing periods exceeding 3 months and price reductions averaging tens of thousands of dollars. Sharp contrast. Texas and Tennessee are both no state income tax states. Tennessee has lower property taxes and lower home insurance. Texas faces more compounding carrying cost pressure. Same income tax structure, very different total cost of ownership. Texas's seller paralysis reflects the gap between the state's no income tax brand and the structural carrying cost environment that has thinned the buyer pool faster than the seller expectations have adjusted. Hey, before we get into the bottom 5, the states we're about to cover are the ones where the seller paralysis has been most aggressively documented, where days on market have climbed most substantially, and where the structural conditions have produced sustained inventory accumulation. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one we're working on is 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled, and you'll want the names. Like the video if you've ever watched a for sale sign sit in your neighborhood for over 6 months and known the reason wasn't just the price. Drop a comment if you're trying to sell in one of these 10 states or considering it. Real conversations happen in the comments, and I read them. Now let's keep going. Number 5. Florida, the Sunshine State, where the median home spends 61 days on market, more than 50% longer than the national median. Where Tampa days on market reached 78.6 days, with the largest percentage increase between 2024 and 2025, where Orlando added 13.4 days to reach 80.1 days, and where the condo segment has 14.1 months of inventory in Miami-Dade. Florida median home spends 61 days on market, more than 50% longer than the national median of 40 days. Tampa home days on market reached 78.6 days in Q1 2026, the largest percentage increase between 2024 and 2025 at 27.2%. Orlando days on market reached 80.1 days, the largest absolute slowdown. Jacksonville days on market reached 63 days, the third highest in major U.S. cities. Miami-Dade condo inventory hit 14.1 months in June 2025. The Florida real estate reality is the most extensively documented major state slowdown in America. The hurricanes have intensified, the insurance has been disrupted, the condo segment has collapsed in transaction velocity, the retirement migration buyer pool has thinned. What residents notice in Florida is that homes that would have sold in 30 days in 2022 now routinely sit on the market for 4 to 5 months, with multiple price reductions and structural assessments compounding the buyer hesitation. Sharp contrast. Florida and South Carolina are both Southeast Atlantic states. South Carolina has experienced similar but less concentrated slowdown. Florida has been more affected by the combined climate and insurance and condo pressure. Same region, very different transaction velocities. Florida's seller paralysis reflects the most extensively documented state-level housing market slowdown in modern American history, with the cumulative structural pressures producing sustained inventory accumulation across single-family and condo segments simultaneously. Number 4. South Carolina, the Palmetto State where the median home spends 65 days on the market, where Hurricane Helene compounded existing insurance pressures, where the rapid inbound migration has not translated to corresponding transaction velocity, and where the seller experience has shifted substantially from 2022 to 2026. South Carolina median home spends 65 days on the market, fourth slowest in America. South Carolina has been the fastest growing state by percentage in 2024 and 2025. South Carolina coastal home insurance premiums climbed roughly 60% between 2022 and 2025. Hurricane Helene caused over $40 billion in damage in September 2024, with significant inland flooding in the South Carolina upstate. South Carolina rural hospitals have continued to face financial pressure consistent with non-expansion state patterns. The South Carolina real estate reality is that inbound migration has continued, but transaction velocity has slowed. The state's marketing has emphasized inbound migration. The structural insurance and assessment pressures have shifted the buyer experience. The seller who lists today faces longer marketing periods than the seller in 2022 faced. What residents notice in South Carolina is that the migration has been welcomed politically, but the corresponding seller infrastructure has not adjusted to the new buyer hesitation around carrying costs. Sharp contrast. South Carolina and North Carolina are direct neighbors. North Carolina expanded Medicaid in 2023 and has stronger rural healthcare infrastructure. South Carolina has not. Same coast, different policy postures producing different buyer experience outcomes. South Carolina's seller paralysis reflects the paradox of high inbound migration combined with extended transaction times, as the buyer pool has continued to grow, but the structural carrying costs have compressed enthusiasm. Number 3. Louisiana, the Bayou State where the median home spends 69 days on the market, where home sales fell 2.46% from 2023 to 2024. Where insurance premiums average 3 times the national average, and where the cumulative impact of climate disruption has thinned the buyer pool substantially. Louisiana median home spends 69 days on the market, third slowest in America. Louisiana home sales fell 2.46% from 2023 to 2024. Louisiana home insurance premiums average roughly 3 times the national average. Louisiana has experienced 4 consecutive years of population decline through 2025. Louisiana has 27 rural hospitals at risk of closing. The Louisiana real estate reality is the most extensively documented Gulf Coast seller paralysis in America. The insurance has been disrupted. The population has been declining. The hurricane intensity has compounded. The cost of staying has separated from the buyer pool's tolerance for total cost of ownership. What residents notice in Louisiana is that the seller who has lived in their home for 20 years now faces a transaction environment where buyers are demanding extensive insurance, structural, and financial documentation before committing. Sharp contrast. Louisiana and Mississippi are direct Gulf Coast neighbors. Mississippi has experienced similar but slightly less severe insurance market disruption. Louisiana has been the most extensively affected by carrier insolvencies. Same coast, very different market structure outcomes. Louisiana's seller paralysis reflects the most extensively documented Gulf Coast housing market slowdown, with the cumulative consequences of carrier insolvencies, hurricane intensity, and population decline producing extended transaction periods. Number 2. Montana. The Big Sky state where the median home spends 78 days on the market, the second slowest in America, where home prices climbed 56% between 2020 and 2024, the highest percentage increase among states, where the limited employment diversification creates affordability pressure, and where the recent boom has produced inventory accumulation that the local economy cannot absorb. Montana median home spends 78 days on the market, second slowest in America. Montana home prices climbed approximately 56% between 2020 and 2024. Bozeman median home price climbed to over $700,000, separating from the rest of the state. Montana's median household income sits around $66,000, well below the wage structure required to support new median home prices. Montana's net domestic migration has slowed substantially from its 2021 to 2022 peak. The Montana real estate reality is the combination of extreme price appreciation followed by buyer hesitation that has produced the second slowest transaction velocity in America. The boom was substantial. The local wage structure did not keep pace. The migration that drove the boom has slowed. The sellers who bought during the appreciation now face buyers who cannot afford the structural carrying costs. What residents notice in Montana is that the seller who entered the market expecting 2022 dynamics now faces marketing periods exceeding 2.5 months, multiple price reductions, and buyer hesitation around long-term ownership economics. Sharp contrast, Montana and Wyoming are both Mountain West states. Wyoming has not had the same level of in-migration or housing cost increase. Montana absorbed the migration and the cost increases together. Same region, very different inbound dynamics. Montana's seller paralysis reflects the most extreme Mountain West appreciation then correction pattern, with the cumulative buyer hesitation producing extended transaction periods. Number 1. Hawaii, the Aloha state where the median home spends 80 days on the market, the slowest in America, where housing inventory hit 5.6 months of supply, twice the national level, where the median home price is approximately $800,000 statewide and $1.1 million in Oahu, and where the seller paralysis reflects the most extensive cost-of-living-driven housing market slowdown in America. Hawaii median home spends 80 days on the market, the slowest in America. Hawaii housing inventory hit 5.6 months of supply, twice the national median. Hawaii median home price is approximately $800,000 statewide. Hawaii Oahu median home price climbed past $1.1 million in 2025. Hawaii cost of living index sits 80% above the national average, the highest in America. The Hawaii real estate reality is the most extensively documented state-level seller paralysis in America. The cost of living has separated from local wages. The median home price has separated from the buyer demographic that historically purchased in Hawaii. The total cost of ownership, including insurance, taxes, and HOA fees, has compressed the buyer pool. The native Hawaiian families with multi-generational ties to the islands are relocating to Las Vegas and Sacramento. What residents notice in Hawaii is that the seller who lists today faces the most extended transaction period in America, with the cost of living gap producing buyer hesitation that no price reduction alone can address. Sharp contrast. Hawaii and Massachusetts are both states with high median home prices. Massachusetts has 22 days on market, the fastest in America. Hawaii has 80 days on market, the slowest. Same general price range, completely different transaction velocities. Hawaii's seller paralysis reflects the most extensively documented housing market slowdown in modern American history, with the cumulative cost of living pressures producing sustained transaction delays that the broader Hawaii narrative has only begun to fully acknowledge. So there it is. 10 American states no one can sell their house in anymore in 2026, on the public record, in clever real estate state-level analyses, in OfferPad MLS data spanning 350,000 transactions, in National Association of Realtors monthly existing home sales reports, in Redfin inventory tracking, in carrier-specific insurance filings, states where housing inventory has expanded faster than the buyer pool, states where insurance disruption has compressed buyer enthusiasm, states where property tax burdens have increased faster than median income. States where climate-driven structural pressures have compounded annually. States where the pandemic-era migration that drove price appreciation has slowed substantially. States where the cost of living math has separated from the wage structure of typical local buyers. The American states where homes still sell quickly in 2026 share specific characteristics. They have limited housing inventory below the national median. They have employment fundamentals that drive consistent buyer demand. They have stable insurance markets and reasonable property tax structures. They have measured price appreciation through the pandemic era, rather than extreme appreciation followed by correction. The 10 states on this list have different combinations of structural pressures, but the cumulative pattern is the same. The buyer pool has thinned, the seller pool has accumulated, the transaction velocity has slowed. The pricing power has shifted to buyers in ways that sellers who entered the market with 2022 expectations have struggled to absorb. The reason no one can sell their house in these 10 states anymore is because the structural conditions of the buyer experience have changed permanently. The cost of insurance has climbed. The cost of property taxes has climbed. The cost of carrying a Florida condo, a Hawaii single family, a Montana mountain home, or a Louisiana coastal property has compressed against the income levels of typical buyers. And the sellers who would have sold in 30 days in 2022 are now facing 60, 80, or 100-day marketing periods that no price reduction alone can fully resolve. If this list helped, share it with the friend who's been trying to sell in one of these 10 states. Hit subscribe, because next we're breaking down 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled, and you'll want to see if your city is on the list. Drop a comment if you're a seller in one of these 10 states or considering becoming one. And remember, the worst housing market collapse isn't the loud one. It's the quiet one where the median home sits 80 days on the market, the inventory accumulates faster than the buyer pool grows, and the sellers who entered the market with 2022 expectations absorb the new reality month by month.